What is life? Why am I here? How is it all connected? And how am I going to navigate this beautiful but crazy journey? I'm Sylvia and welcome to the Soul Sunshine Podcast. Today I'm talking to Fiona Miras. Fiona is a naturally born psychic medium who uses tarot and oracle readings at deeper levels to assist her clients along their journey. She uses therapies that allow an integration of mind, body and spirit. It is a holistic approach, an approach of the whole body, being the physical body, emotional body, psychological body and energetic bodies. Healing and true change truly happens on every single layer. To say Fiona is deeply passionate in assisting others is a vast understatement. She is driven from her heart to make a difference to each person that walks through the doors at Earth's Soul Sky. Fiona is such a beautiful soul inside and out, and I am honestly so excited to have you here with me today. Welcome to the Soul Sunshine Podcast, Fiona. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to tell the story.
It's very exciting. So you're in Melbourne, I'm in Sydney, so we're having a nice little Saturday morning chat today.
Beautiful Saturday morning. Sun's out, we're ready.
Oh, is it? Nice.
Oh,
in
it's
Sydney,
beautiful here.
It looks like the storm's rolling in. So.
Send some up your way.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're talking about Fiona's work as a psychic medium, what that entails and how she is able to support others along their soul journeys. We are exploring the different therapies that she supports her clients with for an integration of mind, body and spirit. We are talking about her healing modalities and what she encapsulates within her healing sessions, as well as discussing the vibrational mineral therapy that she is using to support healing and so much more.
Beautiful.
Fiona, our story, I was writing like, how did we meet? And we met on Instagram, which is...
We did!
We started following each other on Instagram, and I remember you messaged me on private messages, and then I started the conversation and I had a look at your site, and from the very get-go I was so intrigued by the work that you do and by the energy that you were putting out there. So yeah, that was probably like a year ago?
Yeah, it was a good year ago, I'd say. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And now we just kind of kept chatting, and I was like, I need to get you on my podcast, and now we're finally here.
So glad to be here.
Yeah. So Fiona, take us back to when and where your passion for energetic and spiritual work started. You know, what are your earliest memories of that?
Definitely. Look, it's an interesting one because I guess the passion arose from, really wanting to help people see that there are alternative options out there as opposed to, just solely Western medicine when it came to healing or working through things, right? And I guess the penny drop for me was when I was actually in my design job and people would constantly come up to my desk. And I had this little USB salt lamp and some crystals there, as you do. You decorate your desk with all these things, and people would come up and talk about their issues or situations they were in. And I was just so excited to go home and go, oh wait, let me just check, and I'll go into my books and little scripts and things that I had, ancient scripts, and I was really curious to know what that was for them. And I really noticed at one point how excited I was, almost more excited than my design work, to go home and look at this. And it was always a bit of a thing. I was like, how cool would it be to do that as a job? And but your mind comes in and, oh, how would you ever make money, or how would you survive? That's such a silly thing. Like, what, it's just a hobby to you. And I guess I noticed that probably in my early design days. But when I really track it back, and it's something I sort of go into with clients as well, as I always look at what we were drawn to at a very young age. I'm not saying that can be defined as, your career, but it's also a little bit of a hint point, because as a child, I used to collect crystals, which I know is like, kids do things like that. But I really look at, not everyone does collect crystals, right? And I've actually still got the original box from when I was 5 years old. So I've got this little collection of crystals, and it's interesting just to see from such a young age what I was drawn to and actually what I do now, what my passion is. So we could say, maybe around the 4 or 5 years old, I was looking at the crystals, and then I would say, yeah, that was about mid-20s. I really got into, looking at the liquid crystals, which is the modality I use now. And then, noticing what my passion pool was to really help people see life through a different lens and see that they really are their own cure. And it's just about having the right modality to help them access back into themselves to begin that healing process. So, yeah, I'd say it was around the mid-20 mark where I got that. Yeah.
I love that. And you said something really interesting there. You said we always have to look back at what we were drawn to as children.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a beautiful message because, that's a time where we don't think about things, where we just do the things that bring us joy and where we just explore things that we love doing, And then the older we get, the more conditioning and thinking comes into the game and you're just kind of going like, oh, but I have to do this and I have to do that. While as children, you're just innocent. You're just doing what brings you joy and what really comes out from inside of you, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one thing I note. And even sometimes I touch on this with clients, the career pathway thing. And we navigate that a lot more deeply in a session, but I always look at what we're drawn to as a young age. I feel like that's a really interesting thing. But as you said, the conditioning comes in and this, and even I had that in design. It was like, what are you going to do? Work on energy and crystal, the mind just comes in and really tries to flatten it. But I've got remedies for that. So it's great to see what, we can work with and explore at a session because we can navigate those pathways to really open up the inner child again and have that as like your pulling point for career. So yeah, it's very true. It's very, very true.
That is awesome. And so when we're talking about awakening the inner child and, looking at that, was there an experience as a child, where you felt like, I've got something here that's different and that's different to what I can see with others? Or like, when was that point that you realized that you had a superpower really that not a lot of people have,
Oh, I like calling it a superpower. That's a cool way of looking at it. Look, it's a beautiful gift and I'm very blessed. It's not something I take for granted and it's not something I use as a little party trick. It's a real honor to be gifted with this to help people, to use it in a line of service. But I can remember a very early time in my life where we're actually on Fraser Island with the family. I would have been, again, 4 or 5 years old. And we were full driving along the beach and it was late, like it was dark and the headlights shone on 2 young girls walking. And my mum said, that's so late for these girls to be out here by themselves. She said, let's see if they need a lift back. Maybe they're stuck. And so our parents picked them up and they jumped in the car. And I remember the girl sitting in the back with me and she was just talking about her campsite. And I remember just seeing a visual next to her of the car she drove. And I remember saying it to her and I said, your car looks like this and this is what you drive. And she was just stunned mullet, like, what? How did you know that? And I just remember as a young girl going, I don't know, that's just what I can see and that's normal. I remember feeling that and thinking that in myself. I was like, but that's normal that I can see that. Why would I not be able to see that? So again, the conditioning, in my world, it felt very real and normal to be seeing these visuals around people and getting this information. But as a young girl, I didn't know what that was. I just left it there. I was like, that's interesting. I can see that. And she was quite taken by it. But I'll remember these little moments in life that, seeing things. And the way I used to draw as a child, the teachers would sort of pull mum up and be like, this is a very advanced way of looking at things. Like kids would just be drawing and I would be drawing bird's eye views of like rooms. And they were like, that's interesting that she's looking at things this way. Most kids just draw like the table with the 2 legs and stick figures, but I was doing bird's eye, almost like architectural plans of rooms. It was like I was looking down and in. So I always had this really interesting way of looking at things. And I guess, that was probably my first memory that I really realized with the girl in the car that I had something, because to pick that up at such a young age, and I distinctly still remember the car, it was a bit like a Jeep Suzuki style, beach car. When we got to the campsite, I remember seeing her car there and I was like, oh wow, that's what I saw. It's such a vivid memory. Yeah, very vivid memory. So trying to, as we get older, it's about peeling back those layers of conditioning so we can access that again, and that's what the work's helping not only me do, but the clients do again.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, how did you do that on yourself? Because you said, like, you obviously noticed that you had that superpower as a kid, and for you that was normal, and then, you know, things happened and conditioning came in. How did you find your way back to that? You said through your design job, you know, that was when you really wanted to help people, or wanted to show them that there is a different way of doing things. But then how did you incorporate all those skills that you have in that space, and then how did that journey unfold for you to then really go and start Earth, Soul, Sky?
Yeah, so I guess the beginning of it all, to be honest, was a lot of self-development. And I guess in hindsight, we don't really see that before. It's like, you know, doing a lot of self-development workshops. Like at the age of 18, I was part of body psychotherapy circles, which is really about embodiment and getting into the body and working through trauma and things. Because growing up, the double-edged side of this was, you know, I had a lot of sleeping issues because the spirit was trying to contact me. I was very sensitive to energy, so I was scared of the dark, and I had all this stuff going on. But I distinctively remember, you know, needing to work through some of this stuff, and I was very curious and interested about it. So there's 18-year-old me part of these psychotherapy circles, and there would be people in their 50s in there, and they'd go around the circle and be like, 18, wow, you're young to be here. And I was like, yeah, but I'm really interested in, you know, working on my internal world and working through these things. So in doing that, what I found was you really get in touch with the essence of you. You really get comfortable in your own company. And when you do that, you're able to sit with self and go further inward and really listen to what, I guess, what you're about and what you love and what you want to go into. And this was a really big part of that as well. So that was one aspect of it. The other thing was, I guess, developing those things, my strengths and what I was passionate about. So a lot of the time what I see is people will go, oh, I'm told to do that, so I'll do it. But it's like, forget what you're told. What do you feel? And I was always drawn to certain things. So I was drawn to enhancing more the psychic development, the esoterics, energetic side of things. I wasn't so much interested in, I guess, the mechanics and anatomy, but I did go learn it because it's important to have an understanding. But I really honed in on my strengths, which was, for me, when someone comes in, I can really feel, get imagery and grow that so I could really help people. And that's my niche, is, you know, working on that angle. So that was some of the things I did from memory, just really going into that. Gosh, there were so many courses looking back on what I've done. A lot. But yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And so you were just saying, you know, like as part of that development work, it allowed you to really get in touch with spirit. How would you define that? Like, how would you explain that to somebody who hasn't had that experience yet?
Yeah. I guess with the getting in touch with spirit, say getting in touch deeply with myself, I guess it's different for everybody, but it really feels like this silence where there's wisdom and a sense of knowing there. Like it's silence, but it feels like home. That's the best way I could define me getting in touch with myself. Getting in touch with spirit and working on spirit guides. And that was a whole different level of work. You know, that was in the psychic development where we would introduce to spirit guides and people that are here to help us, you know, convey a message to a client, so to speak. But getting in touch with self, it just really feels like this beautiful silence that has this never-ending ripple of unconditional love. That's how it felt. And I could really put it akin to that feeling of when you meet someone special and you feel really lovely energy. That's how I would feel within myself. So that was the best way I could describe of what it felt like to be really connected with yourself and to have that energy there. You know, it's a beautiful feeling. Tap into it more often. I need to do that. But that was one way I really got in touch with myself. And look, I did that through various things. Sometimes people think we need to sit in silence. It's not always the case. You know, meditation can come in the form of going for a walk and just being immensely present with nature, which Eckhart Tolle talks about. And that's something I practice more, is actually just going for walks, no headphones, no phone, just being really present and watching the wind dance through the leaves, you know. And I say this to clients a lot is, you know, we're not a part, like away from nature, we are of it. So if you really want to get connected with yourself, go out into nature and spend some time, just you and nature, because that brings you so far back to earth and to feeling grounded. You're bound to just feel within yourself. So it's a really good quick cure that I little tip for people out there listening. Great way to just reconnect is just get into nature.
Really be part of it, right? And I think what you said is really important as well, because you said just without anything, without headphones or without a phone or without, like, literally just walking in nature and taking in what's around you. Because I can just talk for myself, but it's really hard sometimes to do nothing. And I also feel like when I go for a walk, I need to listen to a podcast or I make a phone call or I do this or I do that. But literally just walking and just taking in everything that's around you is something that we don't really, or that I mean, I can't talk for everybody, but that we don't really put a lot of time in.
No, and I look, something I actually noticed yesterday, I went for a walk and I purposely left my phone, like I had it on silent, just walked. I have it on me to check time or whatever, but I wasn't looking at it. And I really was observant at how many people, even at sitting at a train station or just walking, were like, I would say there was maybe 2 people I walked past and they were elderly with walking sticks, but everyone else was on their phone. And it just made me realize, like, wow, how hard it is to just not have that. And even there's resistance there, but as soon as I did it yesterday, I was just, it's a bit of discipline sometimes. And I was like, just don't look at it for the whole walk, for the whole hour, just don't look at it. And it was really lovely. I just noticed how full I started feeling in myself because I was really connected to the present moment. And nature's just a big gateway for that. It is a lot harder, I'd feel, to sit at home and just close your eyes. But as an entry point, I tell clients all the time, they'll be like, oh, well, I'll go for a nature walk. Should I listen to a podcast? Should I listen to a meditation while I walk? I said, the biggest meditation will be just listening to nature. So I'm like, just go for that walk. Just listen to the breeze, really hone in on what that sound is like going through the leaves, hear the rustling of the branches. That's meditative, So it's a really beautiful way to ease into really listening to you as well. That's like the stepping stone. And I really give that to clients, amongst other things, the remedies and all that, depending on what they're going through. But yeah, it's a really good entry point, nature.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, surfing comes to mind as well, right? Because surfing is one of those things where you're just in the water and you're just kind of riding the wave, sitting there. My husband always says, for me, it's more like meditation, even if I only catch one wave,
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, it's like, when you were just talking about the whole phone thing, it's like we're supposed to connect with soul and connect with spirit, but everything that we do, or a lot of the things that we do in a daily life, is kind of disconnecting us from it, right? So how can we find our way back to ourselves and to our true selves, really? Because we're just kind of layering it with so many, like phone and work and this and that and podcasts and no, I shouldn't say podcasts because then nobody is going to listen to podcasts anymore.
Love the podcast.
It's just that layering of things, that we kind of forget to just sit with ourselves or walk by ourselves or do that work, really. That can be so simple. So take us a little bit further into your work. So you're describing yourself as a psychic medium, and you've given us a bit of an overview of what that can look like already. Take us a little bit deeper into that work and how you're working with clients, what you're able to offer there.
Yeah. So look, with basically like a session, and whether in person or online, I guess the only difference there is in person, we do the body healing, which is really lovely because it allows the person to really shut off, let their body sink in, let the mind relax. And I do some, I guess you could call it, sacred geometry card laying, which is the crystal laying on the body. But the foundation of the session is basically going into, what they're presenting, what's going on for them, and then me prescribing the right remedies for them to be working through whatever's come up for them.
How does that work? Like, take us through that.
Yeah.
Because I think you said you're already choosing the remedies before they come into the session.
That's right. So basically when someone's presenting, I do a bit of an intake as, you would at the doctor or anything, just to get a bit of an understanding of what's going on for them. But I do ask some very interesting questions in my intake, which my clients have a giggle about because they're just like, what colors and, certain ailments that are going on the body. Have they seen certain things? Has anything been going off in their house that's a bit unusual to them? And to the regular person, that seems just odd and bizarre. But for me, what it's doing is actually painting a picture of what's actually going on in their life, which represents what's actually going on within them that they may not be addressing. And, everything is from within outward. So basically, if we're not paying attention to our body and what's going on there, the secondary effect is things going off around us. And that's as a result of being misaligned within. So this really helps me paint a picture of what's happening for them. And then from there, I basically drop into their energy field and I'm channeling remedies that they need to work with. So a really, I guess, an approach I take at Earth Soul Sky, which I'm really big on, is every person is unique and individual, and you can't just take a book, which is what I find a lot of the time in some modalities, is taking a book and going, oh, this person presents with depression, so I'll just apply what I'm shown here. And it's like, yeah, that may be the case, but let's look further back and see what that aligned to. Where did it come from? Who are they as a person? Look at their charts. You know, this all has, it's really important to take each case individually. And I'm really big on that. Everyone is unique. And so I'll go into that quite deeply, channel the 3 remedies that they need for the session. And then within those remedies, I mean, like I say, I could have the remedy gold for myself and gold for you, but they'll be doing different things for us depending on what you're going through. So that's another layer of it. So before every client, I'd say roughly up to an hour, 45 minutes to an hour before any client, preparing, going into the notes, what they're presenting, how this links up, what the healing pathways are. And I'll make up those remedies and do some notes, and then they come in for their session, whether online or in person, and basically we'll have a chat about what they're going through. And as they're talking, what tends to happen is, again, I get those visuals that I described from childhood, which come in very handy. And I'll start, you know, and sometimes it can be unconscious to the person. So they can come in and be like, I have a massive fear of, you know, people vomiting, and I don't know why. It freaks me out. I shut down, I go into trauma mode, and I don't know where that comes from. And then I might get a visual of them as 5 years old being sick in bed, and, you know, they were vomiting a lot and they were traumatized. And I'll be like, whoa, what happened at 5 years old? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And then they'll sort of feel into it a bit. And they're like, wow, it was actually, mum and dad said I was really sick at 5 and I was in hospital. And they're like, oh, and we piece these things together. But then what that enables me to do is track back to the age of 5, apply extra remedies if I need to, or alter the remedies a bit to hone in on that area. And then we start the healing process. So we'll do the body work around that as well. They'll be taking the remedies for the 3 weeks, and then they come back, we work through the next layer. So it is a pretty in-depth process, a bit of a unique one. But as well, like, I'm very big at Earth Soul Sky on, like I say to my clients, I want change for you. And I find that when people come, they're really ready for change. So, I mean, that's probably a whole nother topic going into the other realms of the healing and the intensity of the work. But
no, we definitely going to go there. Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah. Oh, it was a really beautiful example I had with a client recently. And, you know, we're on her second cycle. In her first cycle of the remedies, it was great, peaking, job offers were coming at her, you know, she's really excited. And then in the second bout of cycle, she was like, oh my gosh, I feel horrible. Like, not horrible, but, you know, she was just a bit like, I feel a little bit unhinged this time. I'm really hating my job, and, you know, I need some shifts. And I said, you know, obviously there's support here. There's always support calls, there's remedies to heal and soothe the process. But, you know, we had a bit of a chat, and I just said, just remember, you've come here for true change, and you came here because you weren't enjoying your job. So I go, what the healing's going to do is enable you to surface that, recognize it, and we're going to move through that so we can start making some big changes in your life. And yeah, it can be confronting, but like I say to people, we're here for true change. And there's nothing we're ever given that we cannot handle in life. If the situation presents, it's actually because we're ready to step into it. And a lot of the time it can just be fear. But with the work here, what we're doing is basically unhinging that a bit. So it's accessing deeper parts of self, so you feel prepared to make those changes. So initially, yeah, the thought of, oh my gosh, I have to make this change, but oh, that's also what I've come here for. And then, yeah, we start stepping into that. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, because I think it's when you're talking about change and when you're doing that work and that self-development and that really deep work on yourself, there is a lot of positive stuff that comes out of it, but there is also a lot of things that are not so pretty that are coming out that you have to work through, right? And so to think the change is just comfortable and awesome is really kind of diluting the fact that change is hard sometimes, you know, and the work is challenging sometimes, but it's worth going through it, right?
Oh,
Because like at the end of it, you're going to be a better version of yourself. But yeah, that journey through it sometimes can be a little bit challenging, you know?
yeah, absolutely. And I say this to clients, you know, and going back to the nature aspect, it's like just look at nature. A great example, last night here it was storming, raining, and today we've got sunshine, blue skies. And I look at the healing process very much the same. You know, it's like sometimes we'll go through a storm, and we've all experienced it where we've lost the job, the relationship's fallen apart, moving house, and then bang, within a few months, all these new things are birthed through. Oh, we got a great job. All of a sudden we're meeting lovely people, new friendship groups, you know, and it happens in peaks and troughs to different levels. But I reminded the client this. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if over the next couple of weeks, you'll go through quite a big shift. It's a theme that I see across not only clients, but in my own life and people around me when we do this work. So yeah, you know, in order to reach a certain area, we have to go through these hurdles. And what I find is the bigger the storm, what I've honestly seen is the bigger the storm beforehand, the bigger the breakthrough after. So it's almost just like a build up. Whereas I find when I have those little stress days, then I have a good little thing happen after. When I have the big ones, there's something really big and great on the other side. So it's a great way to measure it. I try to get clients to really see that the negative aspects of our life or the fear-based aspects are really gifts in disguise. You know, it's actually a blessing. It's showing you where something's out of alignment. It's showing you where a thought might be out of alignment or an area of your life. And I'm like, great, this is great. Let's celebrate that hardship. Let's look at that. Let's look at that part of your job that you hate, because Spirit's trying to redirect you. Your life's trying to redirect you right now. And so I get excited for that. It's not a negative thing. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. We've just got to rejig our brains to celebrate these parts of life, you know, rather than fear them or go, oh my God, this is so bad. I'm like, no, this is great. This is why you came to me, remember? And
Totally.
they're like, oh yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, I don't really want to, but I do, but I don't, but I do.
Oh, we've all been there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really love the weather analogy as well, because it's so true. You know, one day it's sunny, one day it's rainy, and you just have to go with it and you have to go through it. I did an NLP practitioner just recently, and one of the things that you say in NLP as well is you have to break down to break through.
Oh, love that one.
And I think that's a really beautiful one, because there is almost no breakthrough without a breakdown, you know. And even if that's in a small sense around a project, you know, I mean, we've all been working on a project and we just couldn't figure out what to do or like where to go or how to write the first line of your essay or whatever, you know. So you have this freak out before you can then break through and get it done, you know. So it can happen on really small levels, but then it can obviously also happen in really big ways, you know, when you're looking at your life. And if somebody comes to you and they're in their 30s or 40s or wherever they are, you know, it's like they've got this whole life that they've lived and things that have happened. So to think that it's just a quick fix is not really very realistic, right?
Oh, I say it all the time. I'll be like, let's look at it like this. With anything else, I'm like, you start a detox or you go to the gym. I go, you didn't just go to the gym for 3 or 4 sessions and all of a sudden you had, you know, a very ripped and lean body. I'm like, it's with anything. And I say that with clients. I'm like, give yourself a chance. I say a minimum of 3 sessions in a row, which is very achievable. It's only 1 session a month, you know.
It's not that much.
It's very achievable because you're only coming once every 4 weeks, and there's check-in points. Like, I'm very big on support. It's not about here's your session, here's your remedies and see you later. There's support there. I put self-care sheets in there. There's support remedies if they need them throughout any point of their journey. But it's really important to give it a good clean shot. Especially what I find is I'm yet to have a person walk into the space that has gone, yes, I've worked with the liquid crystals. It's been new to everybody. Even though it's been around for nearly 30 years, not a lot of people have delved into this, or even really energy work. Because I get a lot of referrals to people who have had really significant breakthroughs, and they'll be like, oh, so-and-so's referred me. I've never done this before, you know, which is fine. And it's great because it's an exciting opening for them. So really important to give yourself a chance and just, you know.
Let's go into the crystals and the energy work and the really deep work in a second. But the one thing that I wanted to still bring up from your last point was when you were explaining the process to us, right? You said, for example, that person gets really freaked out by people vomiting, and then you look back and you're like, oh, they were really sick when they were 5. And then you said you can go back and apply it at that age. Can you give us a little bit of an insight of how that works, what that looks like? Because that's really interesting. So you're not just working with the person that's in front of you right now in that moment, you're also able to backtrack and go like, okay, how can we change this event that has happened for you?
Yeah. So basically, the way I've been taught, and it's energy, like I guess a 101 with energy is time doesn't exist with spirit. So whether that trauma is sitting there, it can be very real for that person at the present time. The inner child is still holding on to that or harboring that. And so what we're doing, whether it's, you know, through the remedies for an online session or whether it's in person on the table, we're going back to that point. And I'm basically with the energy healing, the card laying and the remedies, what we start doing is from the seed of it, which is the energetic structure of that person, we're starting to change, you know, that seed, which is through the remedies and the card laying. So that's why in a session, I used to have clients that be like, oh, I just want straight Reiki. I don't want the drops. And at the beginning I did it, but I was like, the drops are really important because, you know, they're vibrational remedy. They go right into us and basically start shifting structures of energy. So it's like anything, you see something that's, I guess I'm trying to think of a little bit of an example of what I could do. You know, one that I use with clients is a cut on the hand and rubbing salt into it. So if we've got a cut and we rub salt, it's going to really sting. But if we don't have a cut, and I could rub salt for hours, nothing's going to happen. The energy body's the same. So, you know, in that instance, someone from a childhood trauma, there's a tear there. So we're applying the right remedy, which has like never failed me. They've always come up and they've hit right on point to what that person needs. That energetic structure will start healing what is required from that young age. And there's certain things I do with the remedies, which I don't know if I'm allowed to go into just because it's part of the coursework, but I can do certain things to basically adjust and go into that person and adjust it to what they need at that point in their life to anchor in and heal that specific area. So some crystals will work on different ages for people. Like there's one specifically that works from the ages of 0 to 7. So generally I find when that comes up, I'm like, okay, something's happened at a young age in this person, which is what they're usually coming to me for. They're like, you know, maybe it's like an eating disorder. And I'm like, we're focusing on that. If I get that remedy, I'm like, very interesting. What happened in that time? And we go into that in a session. So it really beautifully pieces together how we can hone in on an area and really help someone, which to me is like, what a gift for healing. You know, if we can get right to that root cause at the very start, as close as we can, and, you know, work through that over a few months. I had one girl, we only did 6 sessions and it actually was preventing her from having children. So it was a really interesting one. She almost a fear of having children because she was fearful of illness and sickness and vomiting. It's the example. And then we actually worked through that and now she's got 2 kids. And she always pops a little message. She'll be like, thanks to you, I'm a mama now. And I gift that back to the client. I'm like, no, thanks to you. I'm just a gateway. Like you did the work. The answer was within you. You just gave yourself a chance to step into healing and to really step into yourself. So it's really important people understand that they've actually done it. It's big gold tick stars to them. Like I give it back to the client. Yes, the work is beautiful and it's, you know, through an aspect of me, but it's, yeah, it's them doing the work. So it's really beautiful. Really beautiful.
It's them doing the work, but you're supporting them on their journey and you're showing them the parts of themselves that they need to heal and that they need to heal, really, right?
Almost like a bit of a mirror, as I see, like, you know, which can be confronting doing this work. I've been actually doing it one-on-one with Justin Mohika, who is the maker of the liquid crystals, which I work with in the space. I've been doing his coursework directly one-on-one for 13 months. So I started working with his modality when I was 25 and doing it one-on-one with him was, it's been massive. But like I say, the big shifts that have occurred have also given me the most beautiful things. So I'm like that as a healer and as a person, is I'm willing to go through any length of darkness to face myself. And I'm really big on that. So I tend to draw in clients who are really here to do the work, which is a really lovely thing, you know. Yeah.
That's for your personal journey, right? That you are on.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been great. Like I was saying to a client the other day, the work, I'm very committed to it. You know, it's a similar structure where once a month we get remedies, we work through it. I'm doing his advanced set, so I'm doing a bit of a double whammy, but I really prefer that because the growth is enhanced. And like I say, it really helps me be of service. Like, this work isn't just for me, it's for everyone around me. So it's got this beautiful overflow effect on when a client comes through. It's enhancing certain areas that I need to look at more within myself, so I'm able to gift that to a client. It's really special.
Yeah, I love that. And that also brings me back to, what you just were talking about in terms of the energetic body and, having that cut there almost that's been there the whole time. So you're working in a really holistic approach, in an approach where the whole body is being looked at. You're looking at the physical body, the emotional body, the psychological body, and the energetic body. When we're talking about, having that cut that needs to be healed, take us a little bit deeper into like how all of that fits together. How do they kind of sit separately, but then really are all interconnected with each other?
Sure. Well, I like to begin with, it's such a great question, Sylvia, because they're never apart from one another. They're all connected. And so basically, like I said, we've got the physical body, which we can see. Then from there, we've got the etheric body. Then we've got the emotional, the astral, the mental body, and then the energetic spiritual bodies. So what a great example I love to give with people is, which is really easy if you don't have diagrams and things in front of you, is when you meet someone, and you'll hear this all the time, they'll be like, oh, I just got this vibe off them, or I walked into the room and there was this vibe. We hear it all the time. People throw that term around, and what you're actually picking up on is someone's auric body, which is made up of all the things I've just spoken about, right? And so generally what happens is, and the way pretty much everything works in life is it's always got this causal point, which is the energetic spiritual structure of it, the seed, which is what I work with in Earth Soul Sky. So it's all about getting to that seed, that emanation point of whatever is starting or occurring. It always begins there. The physical body is the outcome, okay? And so we can look at anything in life. And a great example is when we create something, someone thinks, okay, I want to create new glassware. That idea came to me. I'm going to think about that. Then I'm going to feel into it. I'm going to start drawing that. Then I'm going to go to a manufacturer and bang, we have a glass here. Now, illness isn't separate from that. And it's a really interesting and beautiful way to look at it. So basically, it's conceived in the energy. It's conceived at a spiritual level. And then what happens is that turns into a thought. And a great example, again, I can use in this light would be like a relationship. So basically, we're in a relationship. We start thinking, I don't know, something it's a bit different. But I'll ignore it. No, it's fine. Like, everything's fine. But the seed's already there. Something is maybe a little bit off in the relationship. That person ignores it for some time. Then they start feeling anxious. Oh, I feel really off about it. I don't know, but we've been together for 7 years. So, it's fine. I'll just ignore it. That energy needs to go somewhere. So it's in your feeling body at this point. And then what I find is that'll move through the next layer of the body. And over time, if something isn't addressed for long enough, it's going to move into the physical body. And this is where we see physical things go wrong. And this is why it's really important to look at aspects of our life. And I've numerous times, a great example was I was at a bar one night, friend's birthday, and there was a guy talking behind me. He was part of the group, and he kept bashing one of his fingers, and he said to his mate, oh, look, I've done furniture removal this week, and you won't believe it. He goes, 4 times I've hit this specific finger, and I could see which finger it was. And I turned over and I said, how are your relationships going? And he just went like completely white. He was like, what are you talking about? And we had a bit of a giggle, and I explained the sort of work I did, and just lighthearted conversation. I don't, go into stuff, but I just said, look, it's basically indicating that there's some strain with females in your life. And anyway, as the night went on, he came over to me and he goes, it's just a really interesting thing that you've raised. Because he was first time in many years, he had started seeing this girl, and he actually had very strong feelings for her, but he was really struggling going down that path with her. And we ended up having a bit of a chat, and his parents were divorced, and there was some strain around relationships for him. So it's just a great example of how when something's sitting there for long enough, he obviously was thinking about this, then feeling it, he was struggling with it. Poor thing probably didn't know which way to go with it. And 99% of the time, people are in that realm where they just don't know what to do. We're not taught this way. And then bang, they'll get a physical ailment around it. And the more severe the physical ailment, the longer withstanding that issue has been, you know. So it's a big thing. It is a very delicate topic to go into this with people, but it's a really important one for me, you know, because this is the way I see healing, and the way we actually move it out of the body is we have to start moving back out. So then what we do, go, okay, physical ailment, this means this, to the best degree we can look at it in, and then I start peeling that backwards. So then to come out of that, we need to go through the emotions, right? And this is where people get sticky. It's like, said the girl with the job, we don't like the job, but we need to work through those emotions now and then move it out of the body, so then we can pull it out of physicality, thus leave the job, and redirect you on the path to find the job that you love or what you're passionate about. So it's a really beautiful way to understand how it works. And what this does is it empowers people. You know, we can go learn these things.
Yeah. Now that's super interesting. And when you're talking about those examples and the fact that, you know, it starts with a seed, you know, the seed's planted in the energy field, and from there that grows, and then the physical body is the outcome. So that seed that gets planted there, I would imagine, is a lot of the time unconscious, and people are not really aware of what's there. Is that right?
Yeah, it can be unconscious or it can be conscious. So, you know, they can really, I guess, put something there because it's part of their life's journey to understand, or it can be something from childhood that has happened, which, like I say, is an unconscious thing, but it can almost be conscious to a degree, because we bring things through to understand lessons and to grow from it, you know. And again, that's a really beautiful question that you asked, because it's part of our journey. You know, we can see them as hindrances, and, oh, why me? Why did my house burn down? And why did I lose everything? And of course, it's valid to feel, and there's a lot of empathy and sadness around that. We grieve. But what I try to also get people to see is it's not always black, it's not always white. It's a blend of both. So although that tragic thing has happened, what is the gift from that? What is the light from that? And we see this often where it can be a horrendous thing where someone's, you know, lost a child to cancer at a young age, but then the family has started a beautiful foundation, which has then gone and helped hundreds of children with that particular rare cancer. So there's always a gift there, you know, through that pathway. But the seed, yes, will start spiritually, energetically, and then funnel its way through. And there can be different levels. I get a lot of clients that come before it's hit physically. They will come at the emotional stage or the thought stage where they're like, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety around this job and it feels really wrong. And I'm like, okay, let's look at that. And we hit it before it manifests, before it becomes an issue in the body, before certain things around them start breaking down or going astray, you know. And I can give so many examples of that. It's so interesting.
I want to go into that in terms of, you know, what else can go astray. But in terms of when you said some people come earlier, I'm guessing the earlier you come, the easier it might be to fix it again, because it's still to a degree preventative, and it's not in your physical body yet, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to play down the fact that, you know, if you have depression and anxiety, that's any less challenging, you know.
Definitely. I love to call it a phase, like an illness is a phase, instead of locking it in as something and attaching to it. I like to give people that power, go, like, even if they've gone through depression for 10 years, let's call that a 10-year phase. Doesn't mean it's who you are, you know?
Yeah, I love that. So if people come to you at that emotional level, for example, it might be a little bit easier to fix, depending on obviously what the core issue is.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, it can be a little bit more. It also, you know, the biggest thing with the healing is I like to let people know it's a 50%. So it's 50% of their willingness as well. As human beings, we have free will. And I guess, look, I could say the biggest mistake I made growing up was constantly thinking I'd go somewhere and that person was like the 100% outcome, like going to this healer or this psychic or this doctor even. They're the answer, they're my cure. And it's like, no, you really have to understand. And I do say this to clients is you've got free will. I'm like, you've come here, this is the work, this is the path. But at any one point, things can get hard and we can actually turn around and just go, nah, this is too much. I don't want to do it. that's your free will. So I'm like, although the path is here and this is a pathway for you to walk, and a beautiful one that will involve a lot of growth and healing, we have free will. So sometimes what I can see is people will go down that path and it'll just be like, nah, whatever, that's, and that's fine. That's part of their journey too, is that free will, and they'll learn what they need to learn from going down the path of that free will. But yeah, when people do come in and it's in the emotional, the mental body, it can be a little bit easier to work through. But again, the severity, it's an interesting one. When I find it's in the physical body, it's more of a snap change. Like I had a guy that presented with pericarditis. It's a really beautiful story. He had gone through a relationship breakdown, came to me, had never done anything like this before, ever. He was like, I've just seen a psychologist. He's like, this is very out there for me. And he goes, but you came highly recommended. And I said, look, thank you for coming. Let's look at this. And he was a bit, again, taken back by the funny questions, like seeing repetitive numbers and things going on around him. But what was interesting was the remedy that came through for him specifically worked on pericarditis. And now he didn't tell me that in his intake. And when I was talking to him and I looked at this remedy, I said, this is to do mainly with the heart. And he goes, oh, that's interesting. I'm on medication for pericarditis. Now, the pericardium is the protector of the heart. And it was so interesting. He was there because he had been hurt from a relationship, which is like we protect our heart. So he had developed a physical illness, ailment with the protector of the heart. So we looked at this. We did one session. And I'll never forget this, Sylvia. And then I got a message a week later. And he was like, I just can't believe I've met this wonderful woman. And I just found out they actually just got married last year. So they've been together for like
Amazing.
4 years now. Yeah. And he actually came for a session recently. And I say, I always use your beautiful story as an example of a physical ailment showing us the gateway. And whether or not he didn't come back for any other sessions, but it just goes to even after one session, the shift he experienced of having the remedy that aligned to the physical thing and what he was actually there for. So the physical can be a really great definitive point for me, because I can go, I can see the end result. I actually know what's going on. When it sits in the emotional or mental bandwidths, it can be a little bit trickier, but it's still fine. We can work through it. It's definitely what I would say majority of people come for. I'd probably get like 15-20% physical. The rest is always emotional, psychological, or a spiritual calling to do something more. So no, it's a great question.
That's interesting. So that it's almost like when it's manifested, it's almost easier to snap out of it. Not always, but I mean, this is a great example because he almost just needed the awareness of it, right? He needed the awareness of him having closed off his heart and him having been so hurt because of that. And so, with your support, he was able to open his heart again and go out and find the love of his life.
Yeah, which is such a beautiful story. I still bask. I'm so happy for him. Yeah, it's just great. It's great.
It just brings up the thought for me that a lot of the time people don't actually know what's holding them back. It's this like something's not happening or something's not going right or not the way that I would like it to go, but they don't actually know what's holding them back necessarily.
It hits me in the heart. I haven't had this happen for a long time where you've said that, and it almost tears me up in a really lovely way, because that was the reason I started Earth Soul Sky. It was this pain around seeing people with these physical illnesses, and they would just go, oh, I need to, XYZ or medicate. And I was like, no, but let's look at the deeper cause of why that's come into your life. What would I be able to help you with? And this was where that burning desire of like, I could really help these people. Like they would be able to understand why they keep getting bashed, their right knees constantly going, or why they constantly have lower back pain. And, there's usually something long standing there. But if we just keep isolating the physical, and it's great, don't get me wrong, when I have something go on, of course, if I have a bad right shoulder, I'll go get my acupuncture, I'll see my chiro, but we have to address the seed. Otherwise, you're continually, like I was saying, you're just buttering the surface. You're not getting right in and going, well, what's causing that right shoulder to continually go out? What's behind that? What are you not looking at? What area of your life is actually, it's stagnancy with the right shoulder and a fear of moving forward. And I looked at that and I was, wow, it was so unconscious, right? So a lot of pain came up as a result. But as I did the healing work, I did the physical, which was seeing the physio around it, acupuncture, and then I also looked at the cause to stop that from coming back. And you see this with people who have chronic pain and they don't know why, but it's always there. It's actually, the answer is available to you. The biggest thing I find is people's reluctance to go there. They don't want to go there. Sometimes it can just be too confronting, or it's a bit of a, oh, whatever, I'll just keep working on the physical. And I'm like, that's okay. You'll do that. You'll be doing that for a long time unless you actually get to the cause. And this is where, when we ignore it for long enough, these big blow-ups happen. Like you'll see someone have a catastrophic car accident, or, you know, big things go off in life. The more severe it is, it's been that the message has been ignored for too long. It's a buildup of energy. You see this with migraines is another great example. Migraines, when you think of what a migraine is, it's exacerbated tension of a headache. It is like so much pressure up here. So I really look at that. What have we repressed for so long in here? Is it an emotion? Is it something that, you know, is something long-standing? So I always, look at the severity of it is really important. The severity of pain is a really big indicator. So it's so interesting. Gosh, but when you said that, it just got me really, it hit me in the heart, because I was like, that's exactly why I started this, was like the pain of seeing people feeling like there was no option and they didn't know what to do. And you can tell, because it gets me wanting to tear up. It's like, really hits home, hits home.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important, right? And we are living in a world where there has been a big takeover of Western medicine, you know, and I think all of the Eastern philosophies and the energy work, it's slowly starting to come back more and more. I mean, depending in which circles you're in, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, I'm totally into all of that stuff. But it's like, I feel like it's beginning to resurface more and people are starting to explore it more, because, I mean, there is definitely a time and a place for Western medicine, and I do not want to say anything bad about it, like 100%.
Yes.
But the whole looking at the cause and not just at the effect, you know, I think is such an important part, because you're talking about headaches is like the perfect example. You know, it's like, I've got a headache, you chuck in some Panadol and off you go, and you keep going with what you're doing, and you don't really think about it anymore. We're living in a very medicated society, and now people are just want to get on with things. They don't want to think about what's actually lying behind it. And it's like you said, because a lot of the time it's really freaking uncomfortable, you know. We are not always ready to go there, you know.
No. And like you said, and I am big on that too, Western medicine 110% has its place. There are some cases where you have seen some severe trauma. It's some books that I've read in body psychotherapy. I can't remember her name, but she goes into that, and it's really important with some trauma. It can be so deep that it can unhinge someone from reality. And in that aspect, there has been, you know, times where people need to be on a low level medication just to take the edge off. And the beautiful thing is you can actually still work with that. So I get clients a lot that come through that are on medication perfectly fine. And what we do is we work together in that. And I like to see the work as a complementary, not always as an alternative, like it's the other end. It complements. Totally. I'm like, great, they're seeing a psychologist, they work through that. They might be seeing an acupuncturist, or we come here and we're working at the other end of it. And what I find is this beautiful fuse actually makes the ripple effect, you know, just unravel in a beautiful ease for them. So no, definitely, like
it's the combination, right?
It is. It's really beautiful. And then over time, you know, like I actually say to people now, there's not much I really do. In terms of the healing work, all I do are my remedies, and that's all done remotely for the last 13 months. And occasionally, I mean, really, unless something physical goes out, but I look at that. So I had my psoas muscle go recently. I just moved house. And instantly I learned in kinesiology. So the psoas is one of the deeper muscles of our body, but it's also governed by extreme fear and survival. Now, this is the first time I've moved out completely on my own, everything done by myself. And even though I had a lot of support, family here helped me out, that inner child aspect obviously freaked out, really unconscious, because I was full of excitement, but I could sense this was something I'd also wanted to do for a long time. And I guess fear, other things had held me back. And my psoas muscle went off so much that I was like, oh my God, is it my appendix? But I went and did my work around it, looked into it. It was just a massive pull in the muscle, but behind that was a lot of fear, survival, moving out. These are your foundations. So it's, yeah, again, it's always beautiful ways to hone in and see what's going on. But again, I went and did a little bit of acupuncture on it, but I also applied the right remedies to work through that. And I would say, I think within 3 or 4 days, it just disappeared. It was like it didn't even exist. So the benefit is by bringing awareness and consciousness to it, you can actually move through things quicker. And it's often what people see as, oh, it's a miracle. Miracles happen when it's just this instant, I guess it's almost like an epiphany mixed with like consciousness and awareness to it. And it's just like, bang, it disappears. And you hear this all the time. Something will happen and people are like, oh my God, it was a miracle. And in that moment, something has happened where everything's just happened quite quickly and bang. Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff. Yeah.
And it happens at the right time for that person, right? Like you said, if
Always.
the willingness is there for them to shift, if like all those factors are coming together, you are there to support them, it can be quite a quick
Yes.
change, like a deep change for them.
Yeah. Faith, hope, trust, and love, really big things. I can struggle with the trust one, I'm sure. And I like to say to clients that just because I'm in this work doesn't mean I'm exempt from the process. I definitely have my struggles and things that I'm also working through. But the beauty of this work is it actually gets you to look at life through a really beautiful lens instead of seeing these things that come up as hindrances or hardships. I actually go, okay, this is great. What's that situation teaching me? Why did this come up with that person? Or, why is XYZ going on with my car? I've had 2 engine rebuilds on 2 separate cars. Both of them were brand new cars. So people are like, oh, no, it's not just a fluke. I look at that. So the engine is actually the power source of the car. And when we look at that within a person, it's their solar plexus. And one of my biggest struggles was, the self-worth and self-value, seeing my worth and my value. So it's interesting that my cars had these issues, right? Lucky it wasn't me that copped some sort of, stomach failure, but it was really interesting that spirit chose to play it out for me that way. Luckily, I also have the understanding of what that's about. So to the normal person, that can seem far-fetched, but this is energy. And this is why you'll see some people have long-standing, flooding, or they'll have something continually happen in their home. But I look at that, I'm like, why is that coming up for you? And I know what that means. So look, it can funnel into a few different things, but it's very handy. It's very handy to have.
Now that's amazing. And I mean, that car example is so interesting because that means it doesn't just manifest necessarily in your body. It can also manifest outside of your body. Like when you're talking about your car, what does it mean if my car breaks down? So really looking at what's happening in your environment, in your home.
So important. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
It's so important. So I often look at that, and without, it's not about over analyzing everything. And like, if one thing goes out, it means that, but big things like that, like when I had the first engine issue and I fried the engine, I was like, well, that's not good. And then the second one had an engine rebuild, and the car was only 5 years old. It was a beautiful brand new Volkswagen. So it was like, how can all these things, and I really looked at that. And to the regular person, they won't notice it. But I always look at, certain things like, I had a client come once and very anxious around a relationship she'd been in for 2 years. And then I asked certain questions, and I asked her, she had any car accidents, and she had a car accident. And I said, what was going on that day? And she's like, well, that was the day I met the partner that I'm currently with. So this was a huge, very big.
And she had an accident.
She had a car accident. Yeah, it wasn't very severe, but it was enough to startle her, and her car was damaged pretty bad. So I always look at that, where the car was hit, what side it was hit. All this paints a picture. And so we looked at that, and, now that relationship has ended and she's a lot happier. So there's always, spirit is trying to bring things into our awareness. And I totally understand we're not shown that way. We're not educated that way. Most people would just pass it off, But for me, I'm always looking at these things. If a car cuts me off and I hit the brakes, I'm instantly like, you need to slow down, Fiona. You're rushing around. Your head's going a million miles an hour. Spirit's trying to get you to slow the hell down. And I look at that. It's great awareness to have. So to someone that may seem as like, oh, it's overanalyzing. No, not at all. I feel like we've actually just so disconnected from really understanding our world and what's happening around us that to them, they just brush it off. But, you got to take a balanced approach. You don't want to be going around your day going, what does this mean? And what does that mean? I've learned growing up, I was a bit more like that at the beginning with all this work, but you know, you take it in your stride. It's like, okay, great message. No need to overreact to it. It's just a messaging system.
A little reminder.
Exactly.
A little reminder, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That was such a good example with you saying, you know, driving the car, somebody cutting you off. It's like, you know, just a reminder, just slow down, you know, you're not in any rush kind of thing. Yeah, so what are some examples that you could give us that, you know, people could really start paying attention to that could happen? Are there some that are like kind of universal, like the one that you said, you know,
yes,
getting cut off in a car where like, yeah, we've all been there, right? So are there any other examples that you can give where people could be like, oh, you know, start just paying a little bit more attention to those things that are happening in their lives without trying to overanalyze it?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I guess some nice little examples are maybe like, I'm trying to think of a few that even I could just relate to what clients have brought in. I guess an interesting one is like the phone screen breaking. Sometimes you'll see someone will just like drop their phone and the screen will smash. And instantly I'm looking at that as like a shattering of illusions, you know, looking at the way we look at life. So there's little, trying to maybe think of a better one. That one's a bit tricky because it can go a few different ways. Another great one is sometimes we'll feel like, you know, and I can definitely relate to this, is when we're at home and it's like, oh, I just want to go out and do something. And people, they'll see this, they'll often message quite a few people wanting to get out and do something, but they're constantly just blocked. They're being shut down and blocked from catching up with friends constantly. And it's like, well, did you ever just stop, go inward and go, I actually just need to be with myself tonight. And maybe I'm avoiding doing that. Maybe I'm just trying to go out and be around people, but maybe I just really need to be with myself and actually have a quiet night. Spirit will always, you know, the opening isn't being opened for a reason. And this still happens to me. Like I'll go to do something, and again, whether it's messaging a few friends or I'm trying to get an appointment somewhere for something. And another great example was I was feeling really under the weather a few weeks back. I had just a really bad cold. And instantly I was like, I need to get to the doctors, you know, I need to work through, you know, I've got my vitamins and my vials that I work with, but I was like, maybe I just need to get a diagnosis to see if what it is. I was being blocked from every doctor's clinic. I was like, why is this not happening? And then I had something on and I had to reschedule the appointment and the doctor wasn't getting back to me to reschedule it. And instantly, that's what I mean, I stopped. So even I can go into that sometimes and you just try, and I stopped and I was like, I'm not meant to have this doctor's appointment. Dropped off. I was better within 3 days, didn't even need the visit. So sometimes it's like just letting go and knowing that if it's actually meant to open up, it will. And there's a big thing I've learned with this work is it's 50% action, 50% flow. A lot of the time people go one extreme or the other. You see that all the time where people are hounding. I want this. I need this. I've got to make it happen. Why isn't it happening? I'm going to keep going at it 110%. And they do, and they end up with something they don't even want. Or there's the other end where they just sit back and they're like, oh, the universe will take care of it. I don't need to do absolutely anything. And then nothing happens. So it's this, you know, 50-50 of like put in the work, but the other half of that is also letting go. And my teacher has it.
And trust, right?
Trust, letting go and just trust. So it's never one extreme and the other. And a great way for people who are listening right now to remember that is just look at the yin yang symbol. You know, it's not all black or white. There's a reason why it's the perfect of half of two. You can just see that in that there's 50% action, 50% flow. And I really remind myself that because we're human, we're in this human experience and we do get stuck in that. We can be like pushing to make it happen. And I'm like, okay, you've done absolutely everything. And I remind this to my friends sometimes. They'll come at me and be like, I don't understand. I've been looking to buy this home. It's not coming up. And I'm like, you have taken every single step. You've got your loan in place. You know, you guys are ready to move out. I know it's all there, but I'm like, now you just actually have to let go. It's not like you haven't done your research and you haven't got the loan ready. It's all there. I go, so now that you've presented this to the universe, it's like, now just let that. And then bang, someone will go, hey, I saw this property and it's what they've ended up buying. Just let spirit bring that other half to you. You know, it's really important other aspect of healing work that I feel like we can forget, myself included.
Yeah, I mean, it is easy, right, to get caught up in it all sometimes, but I love that, like 50-50. I think that's such a beautiful message because I can find myself in that as well. You know, I go like either I just do and like try and make things, and then I'm like, no, I'm just gonna go with the flow, you know, see what happens.
Yes.
And like, so just having that combination of it and really kind of, doing everything that you can do, but then really, I think, trusting in that the right things are just gonna always come to you in the right time. And I think it's one of those things that when we look back at life, it's always easy to see, you know, it's like, oh, this happened for a reason and this didn't happen because then this ended up coming into my life, you know. But when you're obviously in it, it's always a lot more, it's a lot harder to just kind of be comfortable to letting go and being okay with that. But looking back, I think everybody would be like, life has worked out the way it needed to work out because certain things happened and certain things didn't happen, you know.
Absolutely. No, and like I said, I see it time and time again looking back. In hindsight, it's like I can see why I needed to get a certain part-time job at the time, which secured me this, which actually, you know, a guy that I worked with at the time then put me onto someone else and gave me this job, and which allowed this part of my life to unfold. There's always, you know, like I say, we might be here looking down going, okay, I can see what's in front of me, but up there, and I say universe, spirit, a God, whatever you want to call it, and whatever your faith and belief is always 10 steps ahead. And the whole point is to meet it halfway. You do your work here, up there's going to meet you halfway and really help you, you know, if you're open to that. But what I see a lot of the time, again, is you've got people who are just cut off from that. I don't believe in anything. All I believe is that we're here in this physical body. And I see those people do struggle a lot with a faith or belief in a higher place and allowing things to unfold. They get really stuck into the action and making it happen and actually work a lot harder than they need to a lot of the time. It's like, if you actually let up there help you out, you'd probably be doing half the amount of work and getting an even better result. But that's their journey, you know. Or the other way around is you see people who are way too caught up in the spiritual and barely step into the physical and really go, okay, XYZ, I need to put it out there. They're just like, no, you know, universe will take care of me. I don't need to do anything. Like, it'll all just fall into place. And that, you know, we are in a physical world. We need to remember we are here in the physical, and it's an equal blend of both. So yeah, no, great question. Great question to ask.
And it also reminds me of when you're talking about that zooming out level, it actually reminds me of the story that you told at the beginning, you know, when you were a child at school and you were drawing, you know, and there was that zoomed out version. So it's like you kind of have always had that lens as well, you know, since you've been a child, to really zoom out and see things from a different level and from a different viewpoint, you know?
Yes, yeah, I have. And you know, it's an interesting thing looking back at that, how we had different perspectives. And I see it, you know, it's so beautiful. People share these stories all the time. As a child, they always felt this, or they saw this, or they wanted to be this. Like, you know, I know people that as kids dressed up in little firefighter outfits, and now that's what they do as a career. It's really lovely to see how people really retain that, you know, and carry it forth. And I like to say, you know, to anyone listening, it's like, you know, it doesn't matter where you're at in your life, that is always available to you because it's within you. So it's not that, I like to say, it's not that hard to access. It's always there for you. It's just up to you if you're willing to go there and to embark on that journey. Like at 28, I never expected to leave a design job, which I, you know, went and did a degree and honors in, and, you know, was going to go purchase my first apartment. And I remember sitting at the bank and going, is this what I really want? And it was a pretty scary moment, but I remember going to the guy in the bank. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to leave this for now. And he's like, what do you mean? We've been organizing this for a while. You wanted to come here and talk about loans? And I was like, yeah, I'm like, I just want to have a think about it. And I remember leaving, and in that moment, I knew I'd already made the decision, but there was a bit of fear around there. I was like, oh my God, am I really going to do this? I'm going to leave like 4 years of corporate, 4 years of, that's 8 years, you know? And in the scheme of things, that's nothing. There are people out there who have done like 20 years. You know, and leave. So, you know, it's always available to us. You just got to be willing to, I guess, put those lenses towards you and not go, okay, but all my friends at that time were having kids and buying houses, and you really have to be quite certain and strong in yourself and what you want. Like, that's probably the hardest thing, is we get worried about, oh my God, but am I making the right decision on what everyone else is doing? And this is what I'm about, who's strengthening that so you can really stay true to yourself. It's a really hard thing in our society. So
not getting caught up in other people's lives, right? But really doing what you want to do and what feels right for you, and not what other people or society is kind of telling you that you should be doing.
And you'll be challenged. You know, I was very lucky and am very lucky to have such an incredibly supportive family and network of friends. Like mum and dad always supported it. They never queried or, you know, said, oh, why are you going to do that? My dad is like that. I'm very much like my dad. He's very much like, do what your heart wants, go out there, make it happen, you know. But I do, and I see clients from time to time, which is a, you know, it's a beautiful thing. And we work through that is, you know, parents can really challenge their, you know, their narrative and what they want. And they've been raised a certain way and the parents expect them to be the doctor. Your father's a doctor. Why aren't you like, you know, and they're just like, but that's not what I want, you know? And it's huge stuff. But what we do is work through that, work through even just enabling them. I had a beautiful client once who had that, you know, with a beautiful Indian background family. And we worked through that, even just as much as having a conversation with her dad. And we worked through her building up the confidence to talk to her dad about career and the relationship she was in, because he wasn't very approving of it. And now it's great. They all have family dinners together with the fiance, which was just, it wasn't even there before. So, you know, there's so much we can get into and it's always there for us. I guess it's just our willingness to step through that little bit of fear. And then after that, it really does just unfold, you know.
I love that. So, Fiona, how important do you think healing is in this current world that we are living in?
Personally, not because I do it as part of my life's work, but paramount. You know, if you're not right within, you're not going to be right out there. So it always is within us. And if we don't start with us, you would be, I feel, wasting your time trying to change everything around you. You know, it's very important. We see people running around, oh, I've got to move to another country, that'll make everything better. Or I've got to jump from this relationship to that. And then they find they're still in the same thing. And I'm like, well, let's look at the common denominator. Healing is such an important aspect of, I would feel, everyone's life. We're here to move through, you know, certain areas of our life, to grow as individuals. And that's, I mean, a whole nother topic, and it gets a little bit whimsical and spiritual to get into, but, you know, we're here to attain and to move towards enlightenment, really. And so I guess that's why there has been such a big influx of people, especially I find after this whole COVID transition and lockdowns, as people have come out the other side going, why am I here? What am I doing? Life, you know, is precious and I want to make the most out of this, you know. So no, healing is really important. I wouldn't go without it. I mean, look, it's not even something that I see as a chore anymore. It's actually a big part of my life. It's ingrained in me. And I guess I could say it because of what I do, yes. But I feel like our whole world is really moving towards that. And even if they don't want to be, I mean, you are, because to be here in the physical body, you've got a role here. And whether that,
you're here for a reason, right?
You're here for, everyone's here for a reason. You wouldn't be incarnate if you didn't have a reason and something to serve or contribute, you know. But again, that's so deep and it goes into a whole lot of other stuff, which might be a bit controversial, but I definitely feel healing is such a valid thing. And if anything, it will just make someone's life easier, make life better, quality over quantity, you know. So yeah.
I mean, I totally agree that healing and doing that work on yourself is just, you know, that's the reason why we're here to a degree, you know, to kind of become better versions of who we are. And like you said, the ultimate going towards enlightenment to a degree, you know. But then what do you think the world would look like, you know, if more people would understand that need to heal parts of themselves in order to live a more fulfilled life, really, for themselves as well?
Yeah, I feel like, oh gosh, it's such a beautiful feeling to even have that thought, you know, and I just feel that we would have a lot more awareness, a lot more appreciation. I feel a lot less judgment towards things, a lot less reaction, you know, because we understand, you know, back, I would say even up to 10 years ago, I would have a situation happen and I would instantly judge or get angry at that person in me. Now I'm able to, don't get me wrong, it's very valid to feel and to go, okay, that really has upset me. But now I go instantly, well, what's it bringing up in you and why are you struggling with it? You know, and then I'm able to realize it's actually never about that person. That person or any other person could have done that. It's not about the person. What is it brought up in me? And then I sit in that, I reflect on that and go, okay. And then I'm able to address the situation better because you come from a space of awareness. So could you imagine the whole world, you know, Instead of having these like people screaming at each other on the road sometimes, they wouldn't be taking their anger out on people. Fights wouldn't really, you know, it's such an interesting thing. We would have this awareness of like, okay, I don't need to take my stuff out. And you could even look at that whole Will Smith thing that happened. You know, instead of him projecting in that moment, he could have looked within himself and gone, why has that triggered me? Well, there's obviously stress and strain here, or, you know, something to do with it. Like, you know, that's a really great example again of just, and he reflected on it after, but see that we had that buffer time, you know? So it's really interesting. Yeah, I feel we're getting there. I feel like we are moving towards that, but we've definitely got a long way to go. But it's a start. It's a great start, you know? It's a great start. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And it's the trigger is never the cause, right? Like if something triggers you, it's never actually what's really causing
well, I say
why you're feeling that reaction.
It's funny. One of my little sayings on my Earth Soul Sky page is within your trigger lays your trauma. Those words came to me one day. I don't know where I was. I generally find I'm in nature, and this is why nature's great, because things will just come to me and I'll have to pull the car over and go, quickly write that down, don't forget it. And then I'll later put it in a tile for the Instagram page. But yeah, and I always looked at that because things that have definitely triggered me, there's generally been a trauma around there. So, you know, multiple things in life as we all have them, but I've really noticed that. I'm like, okay, that's triggered me because I have boundary issues, or that's triggered me because something happened when I was a young girl and that person's just highlighted that little space. Again, it's like the salt. There's a cut there. They've just rubbed salt in that wound. Ouch, I need to look at that instead of going, why did you do this to me and what? Well, there was an opening there for that person to treat you that way or do that. So let's look at that. And when we strengthen and heal that, that energy won't be coming at you anymore. And when it does, you'll just be like water off a duck's back. It won't affect you because you've healed the wound. So it's such a great way to look at things and look at life, you know.
Well, let's hope that we'll be able to move towards this more beautiful and more centered and more self-authentic world, you know, with the help of beautiful souls like you doing that amazing work out there. Fiona, thank you so much for joining me here today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Yeah, you've just got such a gift to offer the world. I'm totally in awe with your work and what you do. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that here today.
Thank you. I'm so humbled for your words. And thank you for having me. I love sharing the stories. So it's been a great opportunity. So thank you so much. It's been lovely. It's been fantastic.
Thank you. So the three main pearls of wisdom that came out of our beautiful conversation today. Okay, so the first thing that stood out for me was that time doesn't exist with spirit. I think that's a very important message to take away from today, because what it means is that if something happened to you, for example, when you were 5 years old, it's never too late to heal that. So you can go and you can work on it when you're 30, because that inner child is still holding on to it, and you can go back and you can heal that, because time doesn't exist in that spirit world. So it's never too late to really go and make the change and change that experience for yourself. I think that's a super important message. The second point was that there is always a seed that's starting in the energetic body.
Yes.
And once the seed is planted in the energetic body and it's not being worked on, or it's not being released, it's starting to make its way through the 7 layers of the aura into your physical body, and that's where it manifests. And that's where we see, you know, broken legs, car accidents, headaches, whatever it may be, cancer. It's because there was a seed that was planted. So it's really about finding out what was that seed, what's the cause of what I'm going through right now, and what do I need to shift in order to let go of that.
Yes.
And the third point for me was looking at things that you're doing in your life and making sure you always have 50% action and 50% flow. You know, if you're thinking about the yin-yang symbol, it's a beautiful one to keep in mind. It's a visual one, but it's about putting everything in place for things that you need to get done, that you want to achieve, and, you know, actioning it to the 50%, but then also allowing it to happen when it needs to happen, and allowing the universe to support you and coming into play. And we know that things happen for a reason. We know that things happen usually at exactly the right time and when they're supposed to happen. So just being aware of that 50-50, work on it, but then let it flow. I think that's a beautiful message as well.
Beautiful. No, you've summarized all that perfectly.
Right.
You're very good. No, you've done great. Beautiful.
I'm glad, because there was so many important messages obviously in there from you, but that for me was really the three where I was like, wow, if everybody could walk away with those and really incorporate them and really, embody them and think about them, I think that would be amazing.
No, beautiful.
So Fiona, if people want to get in touch with you, they can find you on Instagram under @earthsoulsky, or you also have a website, www.earthsoulsky.com. Are they the best ways to get in touch with you? Just send you an email, send you a message on Instagram?
Yeah, absolutely. Through the website's great. Even on Instagram's fine. Pop me a follow and I'll reply to your message and we can go from there. Like I said, the sessions are in person and they're also online. So it's been beautiful getting to work. I've got a client in Berlin, I've got Switzerland, Italy as well, all over the world. So we post the remedies over, but everyone's welcome here. It's a place for everybody. So yeah.
Amazing. So do get in touch with Fiona, follow her on Instagram, send her an inquiry. She does beautiful work. So drop her a line. What are you waiting for?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody, today. I really hope you got something out of this episode. I hope it has inspired you to really look at yourself even more deeply and maybe starting to notice what's happening around you, what's happening in your life, with your relationships, at work, at home. What are some of the things that keep coming up? I think it's one of the messages as well, is look at the things that keep coming up and what is that trying to tell you, and what is that trying to teach you? Because there's always a teaching in everything that's being presented to us. Please do share the podcast with your family, your friends, or anyone you think might benefit from the knowledge and wisdom that Fiona has shared with us today. I really hope this episode brought some sunshine to your soul. I'm sending love and light your way, and until next time.